When Scott Fischer climbed some of the world's highest and toughest mountains in the 1970s, he inspired many to follow in his footsteps. His 1996 expedition to Everest, organized through his company Mountain Madness, is remembered as one of the most tragic events in mountaineering history. The team was made up of 19 people, including guides, clients, and Sherpas. The mountain was unusually crowded that season, leading to delays and dangerous conditions. Despite the lively spirit at their base camp, no one knew that a tragic fate awaited them on Everest. Sandy Pittman recalled how she noted that Fischer, who was her guide, was making slow progress towards the summit on the morning of May 10th. Although she noticed that he wasn't performing at his best, she remained focused on her climb and was confident in Fischer's abilities. After all, he was nicknamed Mr. Rescue for his assistance in numerous high-altitude rescues. Unfortunately, a storm hit the mountain later that day, causing Fischer to sit down and never to get up. His body would remain on Everest since then. Here is the story of Scott Fischer and how the 1996 Everest accident occurred. It all started when Fischer was in his early years in the 1970s. He saw a TV documentary about the National Outdoor Leadership School, NOLS, with his father. The film sparked his interest, leading him to enroll in a NOLS course. Fischer began to pursue climbing more seriously. He would also spend his summers in the Wind River Mountains of Wyoming. There, he gradually honed his skills and experience in the mountains. He continued to hone his mountaineering craft in various mountain ranges across the United States, especially in the Rockies and the Cascades, and he never looked back. Even while attending Ridge High School, where he graduated in 1973, Fischer's heart was always wandering to the peaks and valleys of the great outdoors. For him, summers were not the time to visit the beach or lounge by a pool. Instead, they were dedicated to the mountains, a commitment that shaped his future path in life. By 1977, Fischer was already making waves in the climbing community. He joined an ice climbing seminar in Utah led by Jeff Lowe, one of the era's most respected climbers. The goal was to scale the frozen Bridal Veil Falls in Provo Canyon, a near vertical ice formation that only the bravest dared to attempt. As Fischer made his way up the icy cliff, his ice axe suddenly broke. He was left hanging precariously, high above the ground with nothing but cold air and hard ice beneath him. But it seemed luck was on his side. His companions quickly got him a new axe, and Fischer continued his climb. Then, just as he seemed to regain his rhythm, a second disaster struck. The axe slipped again, and Fischer plummeted hundreds of feet. Miraculously, he survived the fall, but not without injury. His axe had struck his foot during the tumble. This fall could have ended his career, but it only seemed to ignite a deeper fire within him. In 1984, he and Wes Krause accomplished what many thought was impossible by scaling Mount Kilimanjaro via the treacherous Western Breach route, becoming only the second team to ever do so. That same year, Fischer co-founded Mountain Madness, an adventure travel company that quickly gained a reputation for its daring expeditions. The company started in the rugged terrain near Seattle, but soon expanded to international adventures, drawing climbers from all over the world. Apart from being a climber, Fischer was also a visionary leader and a mentor. He believed that the challenge of mountaineering could change people's lives, and he passed on his passion for the mountains to everyone he met, including his 2 children. By 1992, Fischer's reputation had spread worldwide. He joined a Russian-American expedition to K2, the second highest mountain on Earth and one of the most dangerous. During the climb, Fischer fell into a crevasse, tearing the rotator cuff in his shoulder. Most would have called it quits right there, but that wasn't the case for Fischer. He took just 2 weeks to rest, then had his partner Ed Viesters tape his injured shoulder to his waist to keep it from dislocating. Using only his left arm, Fischer continued the ascent. The team faced setback after setback, including abandoning their first summit attempt to rescue 3 stranded climbers. But Fischer, Viesters, and Charlie Mace eventually reached the summit without supplemental oxygen, a feat of unimaginable endurance and willpower. Fischer's incredible resilience and leadership were also evident in 1993 when he led the climb for the cure on Denali, Alaska's highest peak. The expedition, organized by students from Princeton University, raised $280,000 for AIDS research. The following year, Fischer and Rob Hess scaled Mount Everest without supplemental oxygen, joining a select group of climbers who had done so. They were also part of a team that removed 5,000 pounds of trash and 150 discarded oxygen bottles from the mountain, earning Fischer the David Brower Conservation Award from the American Alpine Club. Despite all the feats Fischer had achieved, it was in 1996 that his name would become forever etched in the annals of mountaineering history. Leading an expedition on Mount Everest with 8 clients, Fischer was determined to not only reach the summit, but to do so ahead of another expedition led by Rob Hall of New Zealand's Adventure Consultants. This rivalry added an undercurrent of tension to the climb, leading some to suggest that the competition between the two teams influenced the critical decisions made that day. As the team climbed higher up Mount Everest, they encountered one challenge after the other. The first major problem was the lack of fixed ropes. The climbing Sherpas and guides who were supposed to secure the ropes along the route hadn't set them up by the time the team reached a spot known as the balcony, which is about 8,350 meters, 27,400 feet, above sea level. This delay forced the climbers to stop and wait, costing them almost an hour. In such high-altitude conditions, every minute counts, and this waiting time was a serious setback. On the reason why the ropes were not set up in time, people could only make speculations. In reality, no one really knows what went wrong. Unfortunately, the leaders of the expedition, who might have been able to give explanations, tragically died during the climb. On May 6th, the Mountain Madness team began their climb to the summit of Mount Everest, starting from base camp, which sits at 5,364 meters, 17,598 feet, above sea level. As the team made their way up the mountain, they reached Camp 2, located at 6,400 meters, 21,000 feet. It was there that Fischer, the leader of the Mountain Madness team, received troubling news. His friend Dale Cruz, who was also part of the expedition, had fallen ill and was unable to continue climbing. Cruz was stuck at Camp 1, which is at 6,000 meters, 19,685 feet. As a show of concern for his friend, Fischer decided to descend from Camp 2 back down to Camp 1 to check on Cruz. After making sure Cruz was okay, Fischer accompanied him all the way down to base camp to ensure he received the proper care and rest he needed. Once Cruz was safely at base camp, Fischer left. Instead of taking some time to rest, he turned around and began the long and tiring climb back up the mountain to rejoin his team at Camp 2. This extra descent and ascent took a lot of energy, which became clear as Fischer slowly climbed to Camp 3 at 7,200 meters, 23,622 feet, the next day. Despite being visibly fatigued, Fischer pushed on. On May 9th, he left Camp 3 and continued his climb to Camp 4 at the South Col, which is at an altitude of 7,950 meters, 26,085 feet. Camp 4 is the staging area that precedes the summit of Everest. On May 10th, Fischer finally reached the summit of Mount Everest, but it was after 3:45 p.m., much later than the recommended turnaround time of 2 p.m. This late arrival was primarily due to the unusually high number of climbers attempting to reach the summit on the same day. The high volume of climbers created significant delays as they all tried to make their way to the top. When Fischer and his team reached the Hillary Step, a challenging rock face at an altitude of 8,760 meters, 28,740 feet, they encountered yet another setback. There were no fixed ropes in place, which are essential for safely navigating the difficult section. This oversight meant the climbers had to stop and wait for about an hour while their guides worked to set up the necessary ropes. Apart from slowing their progress, the delay also added to the already considerable exhaustion and risk of the climb. Understanding the dangers posed by the crowd of around 33 climbers all trying to summit on the same day, both Hall and Fischer had previously instructed their teams to stay close together, within about 150 meters, 500 feet of one another. They knew there would likely be a bottleneck at the Hillary Step, where only one fixed line was available for all the climbers to use. Therefore, the instruction was intended to ensure that everyone could make it through the narrow and challenging part of the ascent safely. However, the crowd and lack of preparation caused significant delays, increasing the risks as the climbers pushed toward the summit and eventually made their descent. As the delays mounted on the summit attempt, climbers Hutchison, Kasishka, and Taske decided it was too risky to continue. They were concerned that they might run out of supplementary oxygen because of the extended time they were spending on the mountain. Fearing for their safety, they made the decision to turn back and head down towards Camp the Four. Meanwhile, Anatoly Bukriv, a guide for the Mountain Madness team, was climbing without the aid of supplemental oxygen. Bukriv has a strong physical condition which allowed him to move more quickly than most of the other climbers, and he was the first to reach the summit of Mount Everest, standing at 8,848 meters, 29,029 feet, at 1:07 p.m. His early arrival allowed him to spend nearly 1.5 hours at or near the summit, during which time he assisted other climbers who were still struggling to complete the climb. Despite the dangers of the thin air and exhaustion, many climbers had not yet made it to the summit by 2 p.m., which was considered the latest safe turnaround time. This time was set to ensure climbers could return to Camp 4 before nightfall, reducing the risk of getting caught in darkness or severe weather. Bukriv, recognizing the growing danger, began his descent to Camp 4 at 2:30 p.m. after helping as many climbers as possible at the summit. By this point, several other climbers had reached the summit, including Hall, John Krakauer, Doug Harris, Beidelman, Yasuko Namba from the Adventure Consultants team, and Mountain Madness clients Martin Adams and Clev Schoening. In addition to these climbers, the remaining 4 clients from the Mountain Madness team had also made it to the top. After 3 p.m., Krakauer noticed that the weather on Everest was starting to change. It no longer looked calm and safe as it had earlier in the day. By 3 p.m., snow had begun to fall, and the light was starting to fade, making the descent more dangerous for everyone on the mountain. At the summit, Hall's Sirdar head Sherpa, along with other climbing Sherpas, waited for their clients to arrive. However, when it became clear that staying longer could be risky, around 3 p.m., they decided to start heading back down. On their way down from the summit, Dorje came across Hansen just above the Hillary Step, a challenging and narrow rock face that is difficult to navigate. Dorje told Hansen to turn around and go back down because it was getting late and the weather was worsening. However, Hansen didn't speak. He just shook his head and pointed upwards, indicating that he still wanted to reach the summit. When Hall, the team leader, arrived at this point, the Sherpas offered to take Hansen to the top. But Hall made a different decision. He sent the Sherpas down to help other climbers and to place oxygen canisters along the route. Hall decided to stay behind to help Hansen, who had run out of supplemental oxygen, making it very difficult to breathe at such a high altitude. Meanwhile, as we said earlier, Fischer didn't reach the summit until about 3:45 p.m., which was quite late in the day for such a dangerous climb. Fischer was extremely tired from the climb up and was starting to show signs of severe altitude sickness, such as high-altitude pulmonary edema, HAPE, or high-altitude cerebral edema, HACE, or possibly a combination of both. These conditions can be life-threatening as they cause fluid to build up in the lungs or brain. Other climbers, including Hansen and Makalu Gao Ming-ho, who led a Taiwanese team, also reached the summit around this time, even later than Fischer. Bukriv recorded that he reached Camp 4 by 5 p.m. after descending from the summit. There is some debate about why Bukriv decided to go down ahead of the other climbers he was supposed to be guiding. Bukriv argued that he wanted to be in a position to help any clients who were struggling further down the slope and to be able to quickly get hot tea and extra oxygen if needed. However, Krakauer criticized Bukriv's choice not to use bottled oxygen while working as a guide. Krakauer and his supporters argued that without supplemental oxygen, Bukriv wasn't in a good position to help his clients directly during the descent. They also pointed out that Bukriv had initially said he would descend with client Martin Adams, but ended up descending much faster and leaving Adams behind. On the other hand, supporters of Bukriv, including G. Weston DeWalt, co-author of The Climb, believe that using bottled oxygen can create a false sense of security, and that Bukriv's decision was understandable given the circumstances. As the weather worsened, the team members descending from the summit faced increasing difficulties. A blizzard hit the southwest face of Everest, making visibility extremely poor. The heavy snow buried the fixed ropes that climbers relied on and erased the trail back to Camp 4, which the teams had used to ascend earlier. Fischer, helped by Sherpa, struggled to descend and couldn't get lower than the balcony, a location at 8,350 meters, 27,400 feet, due to the severe storm. Another climber, Gao, also couldn't continue and was left with Fischer and Lopsang at around 8,230 meters, 27,000 feet, according to Gao's account. Eventually, Fischer persuaded Lopsang to leave him and Gao and go down to get help. Meanwhile, Hall was still up on the mountain with Doug Hansen. Hall radioed down for help, explaining that Hansen had lost consciousness but was still alive. At around 5:30 p.m., Andy Harris, a guide from the Adventure Consultants team, began climbing up alone from the south summit at 8,749 meters, 28,704 feet, carrying oxygen and water to try to assist Hall and Hansen, who were near the top of the Hillary Step. According to Krakauer's account, by this time, the weather had turned into a full-scale blizzard. The winds were blowing at around 70 miles per hour, 110 kilometers per h, and snow was falling heavily, making the situation extremely dangerous. Bukreev, in his account, mentions that the blizzard began around 6 p.m. As the storm continued, several climbers got lost on the South Col, a flat area just below the summit ridge. Mountain Madness guide Neil Beidelman, along with clients Schoening, Tim Madsen, Charlotte Fox, Sandy Pittman, and Lean Gamelgard, as well as adventure consultants guide Mike Groom and clients Beck Weathers and Namba, wandered in the blizzard. They eventually could no longer walk and huddled together for warmth near a drop-off of the Kangshung face, about 20 meters, 66 feet away. Around midnight, the blizzard eased up just enough for the group to see Camp 4, which was about 200 meters, 660 feet away. Beidelman, Groom, Schoening, and Gamelgard decided to go and find help, while Madsen and Fox stayed behind to call out to the rescuers. Bukreev later found the stranded climbers and managed to bring Pittman, Fox, and Madsen back to safety at Camp 4. He prioritized the climbers from his Mountain Madness team over Namba, who seemed very close to death. Unfortunately, he did not see Weathers, who was also from the Adventure Consultants team. By this time, all the climbers who had made it back to Camp 4 were completely exhausted. They were unable to mount any further rescue efforts to reach Namba and Weathers, who were still out in the storm. The morning after the storm, on May 11th, 2 Sherpas went out to look for Fischer and Gao. By the time Bukreev saw Fischer at the South Col, his body had already gone cold. He was already dead. Fischer was 40 years old at the time of his death on Everest. Luckily for Gao, the Sherpas took him back to Camp 4. When Bukreev discovered Fischer, he was half-dressed. This activity, known as paradoxical undressing, is typically observed in the last stages of hypothermia. Speaking about the ugly incident, Bukreev remarked, "His oxygen mask is around face, but bottle is empty. He is not wearing mittens, hands completely bare. Down suit is unzipped, pulled off his shoulder. One arm is outside clothing. There is nothing I can do. Scott is dead." Bukreev shrouded Fischer's upper torso and moved his body off the main climbing route. Fischer's body remains on the mountain to today. Scott Fischer wasn't just a climber. He was a force of nature, a man who climbed not just for himself but for others. He used his fame to raise funds for AIDS research and international relief organizations like CARE. His story is captured in the pages of books like Into Thin Air and The Climb, but for those who knew him, his legacy is written in the mountains he loved and the lives he touched. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to hit that like button. Remember to share and subscribe for more videos.